All right, this is the third video in the audio version of my care guide for Uromastyx. This section is titled Housing. Set yourself up for success with your Uromastyx by providing them with a high-quality enclosure from the start. What follows are my suggested and preferred enclosure concepts, but remember that larger enclosures are always the better option. I recommend using an enclosure averaging 4 feet long by 2 feet wide by 2 feet high for a single adult of most species of Uromastyx. Exceptions to this size enclosure are larger species, U. aegyptia, U. acanthoneura, U. nigroventris, U. flavofasciata, U. nigroventris, and individuals exceeding 16 inches in snout-to-tail length. For the larger species, excluding U. aegyptia, something closer to 6 feet long by 3 feet wide by 2 feet high is ideal. For U. aegyptia, including the subspecies U. a. microlepis, I suggest using nothing smaller than 7 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, and the larger the better. My adult U. aegyptia are housed in large open-top pens that measure 8.5 feet or 8.5 feet long by 4.5 feet wide. Even if you have a young animal, it's good to offer them the same size cage you would an adult. It may be convenient to keep a baby Uromastyx in a smaller enclosure until they are larger, but the change from small to large enclosure can often cause a lot of stress. The youngsters will definitely take advantage of the larger space in an adult-sized enclosure, and you will be happy that they can grow into their home rather than having to move them and stress them out after a couple of years. Options abound for how to build or purchase an enclosure. There are numerous manufacturers of reptile cages to be found online and in magazines, and building one yourself is a common practice. Cages can be constructed out of wood, PVC, water tanks for livestock, certain plastics, glass, aluminum, heavy-duty screen, and stone also can be used outdoors. Keep in mind that open-top or screen and aluminum cages that allow the free flow of air through the cage will require more lighting and power to heat them to optimum temperature. I use two types of open-top pens at my facility. One version is constructed of melamine as an open-top box, and the other is made of two kiddie pools, the blue plastic outdoor pools used for kids and dogs, fixed together at the rim, with the bottom cut out of one with screws screwing them together, creating a circular open-top pen. Both work very well, but neither is all that visually appealing. Most keepers prefer front-opening cages with either glass or plastic viewing windows that make much better display pieces and help keep other pets out of the enclosure in your home. Make sure whatever cage you choose is secure, fire-safe, durable, and very well ventilated. While some keepers house Uromastyx in pairs, it's my opinion that these lizards are best kept alone for the majority of the year. This excludes freshly hatched babies who tolerate communal housing for short periods of time. Uromastyx are highly territorial, and while this usually manifests itself as obvious fighting between animals, it can also be expressed in very subtle ways that are not obvious to inexperienced or even moderately experienced keepers. These subtle acts of aggression result in negative downstream consequences that may not reveal themselves for months or even years. Unless you work from home and have spare cages at the ready, I strongly suggest housing your Uromastyx alone. If you'd like to disregard this advice and try to pair your lizards in the same enclosure, make sure you have a backup enclosure at the ready in the event that you need to split them up, even if just temporarily. Other things to consider when trying to house multiple Uromastyx together include providing multiple basking zones, numerous hiding places, which is not just store-bought hides. This means small and tight crevices that can only fit a single lizard at a time, and many visual barriers and obstacles. The idea is to allow each lizard to be able to get all they need to be happy without being forced into each other's space. Oftentimes people see wild photographs of multiple Uromastyx basking together and assume they can be housed that way in captivity. The most important difference between the wild and captivity is that in the wild, either animal can easily get away from the other at any time, which is almost impossible in a captive setting. In order to create a visually interesting and compelling setup, research is the key. Utilize books and the internet to find photographs of Uromastyx in their wild habitat. Note what sort of habitat your species comes from, and do your best to mimic those conditions in its enclosure. Improvisation can be helpful. You don't have to make an exact wild replica, but research into wild habitats should give you some ideas of what will make your lizard comfortable. As an example, Uromastyx is native to Oman. Their habitat is extremely flat, with few large stones and few large plants or trees. Therefore, the way I set up Uromastyx is different from the way I house Uromastyx, which inhabit massive rock outcroppings and cliffsides. Seeing how other keepers house their animals can also be educational and reveal ideas you may not have considered yourself. This is another benefit to joining groups on social media that are full of both new and experienced keepers seeking to better their animal husbandry and share success. There are many different options for what to use as bedding for Uromastyx. Some substrates I have used over the years are slate, tile, sand, gravel, soil, and cypress mulch. Mixes of these materials also work well. Each bedding has pros and cons, but all are safe options. It doesn't hurt to try more than one and see what you and or your animal like best. My preference is a tile, slate, or stone bottom and or mixed sand with gravel. Many keepers will recommend that Uromastyx under 50 grams be kept on paper to avoid threats of impaction, though I have housed animals smaller than 50 grams on sand and gravel for years, with zero issues to yet report. But playing it safe is totally acceptable, so use your best judgment for the animal and for your own peace of mind when deciding on a substrate. Beddings I strongly suggest you avoid for any size animal are millet or seeds, clay, sand, substrates that are exceptionally fine or dusty, calcium sand, and crushed walnut shell. Substrates like these present significant health risks to your Uromastyx, especially younger or freshly imported animals. Seed bedding offers no traction, which makes the lizards nervous. Animals kept on seeds regularly eat them, one of the reasons it was chosen to use in the first place. But this is probably not a good reason to use it as a substrate. Over the years, I have received several animals from homes that used seeds as bedding, and those animals passed seeds in their stool for weeks after being in my care. This made me feel very uneasy about using it myself. Clay and superfine dusty sand substrates seem to dry out the lizards and the dust can cause swelling and irritations to the eyes and possibly to the lungs. Crushed walnut shell is one of the only substrates that can be a cause of impaction, a direct cause of impaction. Most granular bedding is safe for Uromastyx, but walnut shell is a major exception. Do not use this. Other objects to use in your enclosure include stones of varying shapes and sizes, slate, tile, bricks, roofing tiles, overturned and broken planting pots, grapewood, mopani wood, cork bark, manzanita branches, and manufactured furniture or hide boxes. Please exercise precaution and safety when arranging the cage furnishings. It is not uncommon to hear about animals being killed by the crushing weight of stones or large logs improperly secured. These animals are stronger than they may appear and can push or dislodge objects in their enclosure. Make sure any heavy items in the cage are secure, cannot fall over, and that the animal cannot dig itself underneath them and get stuck. Try to arrange the cage furnishings so the animal has access to many different hiding places. Uromastyx are similar to American chuckwallas, Soromolus ater, in that they feel most secure in tight, small hiding spaces like rock crevices and tight burrows. Having many refuges to choose from will help make your Uromastyx feel comfortable, safe, and brave enough to explore without much fear. It's my preference to have these features and stones scattered throughout the enclosure, with the largest congregation, both in terms of height and number of hiding places, occurring in and around the basking zone. I always have a single flat surface that receives the majority of the heat from the basking lights as the primary basking surface, but also provide 2 to 3 secondary surfaces that receive less direct heat. I've noticed that sometimes Uromastyx use the primary surface and other times prefer the slightly cooler basking surfaces. Try to give your Uromastyx more than one place to bask, specifically under the UV light at different distances from the lamp. These spots should be separate from the basking lights so the animal can soak up UV without being heated if they so choose, and vice versa. Some species, such as U. ornata, U. ocellata, and U. yemenensis, are excellent climbers and will appreciate a lot of vertical space to climb and explore. Others, such as U. thomasii, U. aegyptia, and U. d. maliensis, will use features of varying height, but usually won't climb nearly as well or as high as the more capable species listed above. Moist or humid hide boxes are a great addition to your enclosure. A humid hide is designed to mimic the home burrow of a Uromastyx that they would use in the wild, which are usually relatively high in humidity. There are many different ways to provide a humid hide. Some keepers use small Rubbermaid totes filled with lightly damp bedding of sand and soil, coconut fiber, or a mixture of mediums. Cut a hole in the side or top of the tote and add a corrugated tube or PVC tube as an entryway. Another option is to put moist bedding under one or more of the hiding places in the enclosure and re-wet them periodically. Humid hides are not a required aspect of housing, but access to one will help keep your Uromastyx healthy over the long term. Food bowls come in many different shapes, sizes, textures, and depths. While most kinds of bowls will work just fine, I prefer to use shallow, overturned plastic lids from discarded ice cream or supplement containers or plastic plant water saucers. I like these because they are affordable. I eat a lot of ice cream. Shallow enough for the lizards to easily access the food or water inside, and very easy to clean. Water bowls, if provided, should be shallow and small. Most keepers don't offer water bowls for their Uromastyx because they derive the majority of the water they need from their diet of fresh leafy greens. Some individuals will drink if given the opportunity, so once again, be responsive to your animal and see what suits their desires. If you live in a humid part of the world, having standing water in the cage might not be ideal. Bathing is a very controversial topic in the Uromastyx community, but not justifiably so. Rumors about bathing causing, quote, tail rot or other ailments have made the rounds in social media groups and is often repeated without any supporting data whatsoever. For animals recovering from illness, egg laying, or extreme dehydration, the occasional and short warm bath is a great tool to help keep them healthy. The primary instance to avoid bathing would be an animal suffering from or recovering from a fungal infection. I do not bathe my Uromastyx except in the case of females after having laid their eggs. But a typical keeper is completely safe bathing their Uromastyx on occasion. Once a month is probably ideal or safe. And make sure that the animal has enough time to dry out under the basking lights and reach ideal temp afterwards. That's the end of the housing section. The next section is titled Heat and Light, and that'll be in the next video.